Coming up on Network Africa, Zambia holds a state memorial for founding father Kenneth Kaunda, who died last month. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says the humanitarian situation in Tigray, Ethiopia is deteriorating. Plus, data shows the Johnson & Johnson vaccine works well against the Delta COVID-19 variant. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in Zambia, where several African leaders have paid their last respects to the late Kenneth Kaunda, the country's founding father, an icon of African nationalism, who died last month at the age of 97. A state memorial has been held in his honor in the capital, Lusaka. Some of the dignitaries present were the presidents of Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Malawi, among others. Zambia's military had been flying the liberation hero's body to the country's 10 regions to give the public an opportunity to pay their last respects. President Edgar Lungu on Thursday night addressed the nation and declared public holidays for the day of the memorial and the funeral on Wednesday. The former president will be buried next week at a private ceremony for family and invited guests only. Concern over the well-being of the people in Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray continues. According to the UN humanitarian partners, the situation remains volatile and unpredictable. The near 8 months of fighting have left more than 5 million people in need of food aid and some 350,000 living in famine conditions. The withdrawal of Ethiopian federal forces and their unilateral humanitarian ceasefire has not yet altered the situation for those in need.
Turning to Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues say that the situation in Tigray remains volatile and unpredictable. Major towns, including Mekelle, Adigrat, Adwa, Aksum, and Shire remain calm, but there are unconfirmed reports of clashes in the southern and northwestern zones. Electricity and telecommunications are still cut off throughout the region. There are no flights or road transportation in or out of the region. Despite this, our humanitarian partners continue to operate in line with humanitarian principles. The UN Migration Agency delivered fuel to operate water pumps, as well as firewood for cooking in a few displacement sites in the Mekelle area, benefiting several thousand people. Partners are continuing to bring water into Shire and displacement sites in Mekelle. An international NGO partner continues to provide medical services in Samre town in the southeastern zone.
The African Union is condemning the violence that has gripped Eswatini. AU Commission Chairman Musa Faki Mahamat has condemned the violence, looting and destruction of property in the country following pro-democracy protests. The Commission, in a statement, said they are closely following events and is deeply concerned at the ongoing political and security situation. Mr. Mahamat now calls for immediate steps to protect lives and citizens and their property, urging the Eswatini leadership and all stakeholders to refrain from further acts of violence that could exacerbate the situation. Demonstration in Africa's last absolute monarchy started over the weekend, with people calling for King Mswati to step down and allow for a transition to democracy. Joining us now is our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Debia, for more on this. Hello, Betty. What more can you tell us about this protest that has gripped the nation of Eswatini? What is the situation today?
Thank you so much, Layo. As you know, I'm in Johannesburg. Communication is quite difficult now with people who are on the ground that I have been talking with. But I just got off a Zoom meeting, a briefing kind of, from some of the activists from Eswatini, and I specifically asked what the situation today is, and it's tense. Their words, tense, and quite depressing, but that I understand that some of the shops that had been closed before because people were asked to stay home to kind of calm the situation and I guess reduce the looting and all the violence that we had seen in the past days, but that some of the shops have been allowed to open. We understand the internet is still being shut down and you can't really reach people who are there via some of the social media platforms, that people are still allegedly being hunted down by the security forces. So that's the situation at the moment. We haven't heard from the king, but some of the members of the government, like the acting prime minister, Temba Masuku, has been, calling for calm as well, saying that the king hasn't fled the country, the king is still in the country, and things like that. But it's tense and depressing. These are the words of some of the activists from Eswatini that I spoke to today.
Yeah, you just spoke about my next question, any response from the king, and you said we've not heard anything from him. How about, regional players, South Africa, for example? What comments have we heard on the situation and, plans in, making things calm?
There have been calls by the DIRCO, that's the Department for International Relations and Cooperation, South Africa here. We've heard from the ANC, we've heard from the South African Communist Party, just single comments calling on the South African government to do much more. And the SADC as a region, they're still dealing with the other country that is stabilized at the moment in the region. So there have been statements put out. But the leaders, this protest is being led by a lot of young people, and they're calling for a lot of things, asking them to withdraw the army from the streets, asking the international community to do much more. Maybe after the Zambian funeral, probably we'll have SADC sit down and say something more concrete. But nothing really. We've had even ZAPU, that's the Zimbabwe People's Union, has released a statement calling for calm, calling for people's rights to be protected, as you talked about the AU statement that we got last night. But they're calling the international community to do much more, probably sanctions, arms embargo, and the likes. But it's all calls for now. We haven't really seen something concrete. Maybe we will hear from the king soon, but right now it's just the acting prime minister who has been speaking. But the people, the activists who are most of the things we're hearing is from them, so we can't really verify, because I know that the issue of the number of fatalities, where you hear that 40 people have died, 29 confirmed from the activists, whereas a local newspaper is saying it's just 9 people. We can't really verify which is which. But maybe we expect SADC to say something soon and probably do something much more than probably call the leaders. Some of those who have released statements are saying they should summon the ambassador in the country, in South Africa, to actually brief the government on what exactly is going on and what's being done to protect the people. But we're watching to see how that will go in the next few days.
All right then, Betty Dibia, our South Africa Bureau Chief in Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you.
3 soldiers in Gabon have been sentenced to 15 years in jail for an attempted coup back in 2019 when President Ali Bongo was recovering from a stroke. Lieutenant Kelly Ondo, a commando leader and member of the Republican Guard, and his 2 co-defendants have been fined 31 million CFA francs each and expelled from the army. All 3 were found guilty of endangering the internal security of the state, criminal conspiracy, and theft. But their lawyer, Jean-Pierre Mubembe, says he will appeal the sentence. Meanwhile, the gendarmes who joined them were all acquitted, as requested by the prosecution. 2 others were shot dead by the security forces at the time of the attempted takeover in January 2019. A court in Côte d'Ivoire has sentenced 10 people found guilty of child trafficking to 10 years in jail each, part of an effort to clamp down on organized networks that smuggle children to work in cocoa plantations. They include transporters and smugglers, all of whom are from Côte d'Ivoire's northern neighbor, Burkina Faso. They were arrested in April while transporting about 40 minors between the ages of 10 and 17 years. The children were being ferried via two main routes to work in plantations in the central and southern parts of Ivory Coast's cocoa belt. The children have since been released and returned to Burkina Faso, as officials say they are stepping up its fight against child labor and trafficking in the cocoa sector in order to discourage would-be abusers undeterred by years of light sentencing. Head of South Africa's Medical Research Council says data from laboratory studies show Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine works well against the Delta variant that now dominates new infections in the country. Penny Moore is a professor at the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, and she says that all data collected suggests that the vaccines would work against the Delta variant. Johnson & Johnson said that its single-shot vaccine showed strong promise against that Delta variant and other emergent strains, and also provided durable protection against the infection more broadly. In South Africa, the J&J and Pfizer vaccines are being used in its immunization campaign.
A couple of questions that I'd like to try and answer. The first is, do the vaccines work? And I think we want to reiterate that all the existing data that we have, laboratory immunogenicity data, effectiveness data, suggests that the vaccines that we have will work against the Delta variant.
Police in Uganda have arrested 2 nurses and are hunting for a man who had posed as a doctor to sell and administer fake coronavirus vaccines to hundreds of people. Authorities in the East African nation said the phony doctor had persuaded several companies to pay for their employees to receive vaccines, charging between 100,000 to 200,000 Ugandan shillings per shot. Documents seized in a raid of the premises used by the suspects showed at least 812 people had been vaccinated, but officials say the number of victims could be more. Uganda is in the midst of a second wave of infections as cases and fatalities have soared since last May, fueled by the highly infectious Delta variant. In a year marked by the global pandemic, the UN Refugee Agency says the focus in 2020 was to advocate for the inclusion of refugees in COVID-19 national response plans amid major health challenges. This year, the agency is pushing countries to include refugees in vaccination programs. In Africa, Senegal and Cameroon have already registered refugees for COVID-19 vaccines.
The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says refugees and asylum seekers have begun receiving COVID-19 vaccinations in 91 of the 162 countries being monitored so far, and is calling on states to increase refugee inclusion. At the onset of the pandemic, access to health facilities significantly reduced for refugees amidst movement restrictions and the fear of getting infected, according to the agency. A senior official noted the critical role that volunteer health workers have played.
We also were involved in training staff to both diagnose and to manage cases. And one of the larger areas that we were working on is also communicating with communities. So letting the communities know what was happening and what they could expect, trying to pass on information about how to minimize the risk of transmitting COVID, where they could go if they got symptoms.
In the first half of 2020, refugee resettlement fell 69% from 2019 levels to just over 10,000. UN data shows the program resumed in June, but at a much slower pace. The pandemic hit as attitudes to immigrants were hardening. loosening another thread in increasingly frayed international efforts to maintain global solidarity. Burton says measures were taken to ensure that refugees continue to have safe access to essential services in 50 countries hosting 16.5 million refugees.
We wanted to make sure, for example, that people that were stable and needed chronic disease medications, that they didn't need to come to the clinic, that we could look at alternative means of providing them with services and delivering medicines to their homes. We wanted to make sure that pregnant women, were still able to come to the health facility to deliver, and that they knew that, and they knew that that was important.
In Africa, Senegal and Cameroon allowed refugees to register for vaccines in designated health facilities and city councils in the vicinity of their communities. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the region's largest awareness-raising campaign on the pandemic has reached more than 1.7 million people since the beginning of the pandemic. In several countries, vaccination sites are located far from where refugees live, which could deter them from seeking immunization. This is the case particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where newly reported cases are on the rise, in contrast to the observable decline in many parts of the world.
Still to come on the program. Our Africa Tech segment discusses ways educational technology is revolutionizing learning. Please stay with us. Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Educational technology, also known as EdTech, is one of the many ways education is being made easier and accessible to everyone. It is one of the fastest growing parts of digital technology over the world, and its usefulness cuts across every part. EdTech startups in Nigeria in recent years have witnessed great growth, and to discuss further on this, we have joining us Mercy George Igbafe, founder of Lento. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Tech.
I want to say sincerely, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much.
Well, let's begin with some of the ways technology is helping to improve education. You know, why should we take EdTech so seriously?
I would say why not? The world is fast moving and fast in a very rapid way, and the world is changing. COVID-19 accelerated that. With the lockdown and children learning, leveraging digital technology, there's a major necessity for us to leverage digital technology to aid our learning, especially as basic as using the Zoom to connect with a learner to the teacher, as basic as using a Zoom account, Google Classroom. All of this tools would enable the children to learn from home, or the learners, whatever it is, no matter the sector. I practiced it and I know that it works. It doesn't matter the age demographic, they can learn leveraging digital technology. So it is imperative for us to align, especially with our curriculums right now in Nigeria, not been so great. I think it's important that we are.
Well, you know, EdTech is said to be one of the fastest growing parts of digital technology. Can you just share with us some of, you know, the growth in that space?
Oh, the growth has been astronomical in terms of numbers. In terms of numbers, the growth has really radically skyrocketed, especially with the unfortunate disaster of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that people are learning from home. I'll speak with regards to what we do at Lento. Just taking education off the classroom and making it accessible to everybody. Ages from 6 to 18, from 18 to 25, they are learning. So the industry has experienced a major boom, and the boom in their percentage has skyrocketed because now a lot of organizations are beginning to like, okay, especially with the fact that Nigerians, we love to learn. We love to learn. Every time I take a poll, 87% often say they're just taking a course online, just leveraging digital technology is their learning. 87%. And the last recent poll that I took of over 500 people, personally, I'm not even talking about the world's data, it's 90% of people, they're taking one form of trade or the other and leveraging online or digital technology to take that learn. And the world is actually going forward towards using things like hologram, where the teacher can be present in your house and stimulate the entire experience. People are using a lot of digital technology to accelerate and to aid that learning.
Indeed, these are interesting, technological trends and even the numbers that you have just put out to us. But, as part of efforts in catching up to this recent and popular trends, how can educational institutions align digital strategies with their teaching?
I'll make it very practical. Recently, an MD of an organization told a young lady to reach out to me. Lento, I want to take an MBA overseas. And I said, for what? What's the purpose of you taking the MBA? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And I said, what will you do? Okay, when you come out with the MBA. We have so many graduates with MBA, MSc, they are employable today because of the curriculum. Asia, even speaking America, the number of people that go through their schooling system are international students. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Now, but with regards to Asia, they start teaching their children from age 4 how to use digital tools to learn. Then when they've matured and earned enough money, they go back to school. The reverse is what we do in Africa. Our curriculum has to be overhauled. And recently my daughter came and asked me, I need to do invertebra and vertebra. Help me to print it out. Actually, what is she going to do with that? A child can sit down and learn how to code. Create a program that is shippable to the world and for everyone to have access. A typical case in point was last during the peak of the pandemic and the lockdown. I had a session of 6 to 18 years old where they had to learn in collaboration with other facilitators how to code English language, how to speak mathematics. A 9-year-old created an animated cartoon. I will never stop speaking about it because she did just create an animated cartoon. She finished a 14 module. She's 9. So just imagine if we can create such, we can overhaul our educational curriculum and create infrastructure to support justice because it's not enough. Every time I take a poll, over 7,000 data sets that I have, what is the number one challenge with you learning online? Number one is internet connectivity. People are not afraid to pay for internet. It's the fact that it does not work.
That's. I know there's a lot to discuss about this. There are challenges, but we just hope we are able to overcome those challenges. Thank you so much, Mercy George Igbafe, founder of Lento. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Tech.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all we have for you for today and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke. Have a great weekend.